Dive back into the hero's journey. In What If Deku Returns, Part 2, explore a world of surprises, alliances, and love. Get ready for a thrilling sequel that packs a punch. While Nezu's sudden announcement about the assembly for the meeting of the Summons family was taking place, something even more interesting was happening in a secret base hidden deep in the woods. The event was so violent and chaotic that birds took flight as a sign of danger. "Damn traitors," exclaimed Spinner, a recognized member of the League of Villains, staggering on the brink of death due to his wounds. "Toga-chan, I think you went too far with the poor reptile," casually commented a very familiar voice among the League of Villains members. "The bastard will die before we can hand him over to the commission, as the boss ordered. But, looking at it, his death won't exceed the allowed number we can kill." Himiko Toga, hearing her comrade's words beside her, realized he was probably right. The reptilian villain could barely stand due to hundreds of cuts all over his body, hinting at a grim future for his survival. Unfortunately for him, Toga's great thirst for blood surpassed her self-control to strictly follow orders. So, she would take some liberties for the moment, exploiting a legal loophole. "In this case, since we're skipping the commission and taking him straight to Tartarus, I might as well have another dish for breakfast tomorrow," said the girl, licking her lips, blood dripping, and looking at her old friend predatorily. "You know what? When I met you, I always wondered if your blood was as red as ours. Fortunately, it is." "You're crazy," Spinner said, scared of the friend who had recently become a traitor. "Stay away from me, traitor." The reptile couldn't believe what was happening. His two comrades had betrayed the League, leaving a chaos of death and destruction throughout the organization's main base. They, who were the most loyal to the cause and would lead the organization to final victory against the heroes. Unfortunately, at some point, he had considered them more than brothers. A bond he thought was strong and unbreakable. They were even united against the Hero Society. "It's a shame, Spinner. We hoped you'd be older, or that the organization would have been defeated by the so-called good. Unfortunately, not much time passed since our journey to the other world, and you were still here, forcing us to obey our boss's orders, who told us to get our affairs in order," said the man with an evil smile. Behind the man, the main courtyard of the base was filled with scattered corpses of League army members. The vast majority in a deplorable and inhuman state, not all had limbs attached, intact skin color, or the same muscle mass as before. It was a terrifying landscape that only the most disturbed villains could endure. Among the victims were Muscular, Mustard, Magna, Moonfish, Twice, and Mr. Compress, who had no chance against the traitors. The only survivors were Dobby and hundreds of villains specifically selected, remaining motionless like mannequins, under the effect of mysterious magic, although they were aware of what was happening around them. All Spinner could do was hope that betrayal would be punished, whether he died or not, as long as someone more powerful punished them. "I know our leader, your adoptive father, won't be happy with this. He'll probably come back from the bar soon to see the mess you've caused, you son of a bitch," threatened Spinner, brandishing his katana. Tomura Shigaraki remained unfazed by the possibility of his father coming soon. He only showed his sadistic smile, seeing the false hopes of his former comrade and the desperation in his eyes. "Even though I would like to take care of my father myself, someone else reserved the right to face him, just like others volunteered to confront other missing members of the League. For instance, a good friend asked us to leave her dear little brother alive until she arrived." Spinner responded with fury in his voice. "Who betrayed us, Tomura-sama? The Commission? The heroes? That damn teenager?" Every effort from Spinner cost him valuable seconds of stability before being weakened by the blood loss inflicted by Toga. Himiko Toga replied. "It's not personal, Spinner. Circumstances changed, and we were transported to a miserable world for 10 years. It's a time when many things can happen, like reconsidering your friendships, ideals, and allies. Now, we are serving loyally under the Wolf Clan and following orders from our boss, my beloved husband." "Whom are you serving?" asked Spinner. "You were right in your last question, my esteemed reptile, it's Izuku Midoriya," Tomura responded seriously. "The enemy I swore to destroy is now the one I serve." "They're crazy. Another world? It's all lies, this is," said Spinner, silenced at the last second. Although he couldn't deny the undeniable change in appearance of those who were once his friends. Before this nightmare, he remembered they looked completely different. Tomura seemed like an evil sorcerer of dark magic, and Toga dressed like a real vampire, with an outfit reminiscent of various vampire series. Another thing to consider in their story was the incredible powers they demonstrated in killing many of those present. It had nothing to do with the powers his former allies knew. The disaster is certainly unexpected. But what's truly surprising is seeing who caused it, said a familiar voice behind the duo. Without warning, a portal opened right behind them, and all for one, the criminal mastermind of many eras, the Underworld King, legendary for his cruelty and intelligence, appeared. He was accompanied by his loyal ally Kurogiri, the master of portals. "Hello, father," said Tomura with false courtesy. "Is this how you repay the man who gave you a life after losing your cursed family? Who saved you from a future in the dirty streets of Tokyo and gave you a purpose in this world to change the society we live in?" "Boss," interrupted Spinner to his leader, "they are traitors, they killed many of us, left others alive, and have powers that." "Toga, silence him. He's starting to irritate me," said Tomura seriously. "Hi," she said cheerfully. Suddenly, Toga transformed into several bats that swooped directly toward Spinner. He screamed in pain as she attacked him, and it was easy for Toga to leave him without any reserve of blood. There wasn't much resistance from the villain. When Toga returned to her human form, she was disappointed by the limited blood supply. "It's a shame he had so little. Left me unsatisfied," Toga said as blood stained her lips near the lifeless reptile's neck. "Having two quirks. Impossible. The boss never granted you such power. Unless you stole the blood from," commented Kurogiri, observing Toga in action. "It's not a quirk you're seeing," Kurogiri Tomura said with an amused smile. "It's the result of abilities we acquired during our time in the other world. Turns out, we were away for 10 years. Meanwhile, Afo couldn't believe what was happening. Every single one of his plans was about to be ruined by his pupil's sudden betrayal. Not only that, seeing Tomura, he realized that every trace of power he had inherited had vanished, losing all influence over him. He couldn't stop his fury from escalating. For him, his mind was like a storm unleashing its first destructive bolts onto the innocent ground. "No matter what tales you've spun, son, you will die for your betrayal," Afo said with a perceptible red aura. Tomura couldn't help but laugh at the situation and his father's pathetic threat. Freed from his strings, he took the opportunity to say what he truly wanted from him. A truth that would have been an unpleasant surprise in the future. "You're furious because I won't be your vessel anymore, right?" "What?" exclaimed Afo, surprised. It was well known to him that Tomura was oblivious to this point. Then, Tomura began to say what he had always wanted to tell his father. Every word had been carefully thought out and rehearsed over the years. "It's pathetic that your body is so deteriorated that you can no longer maintain your reign. You needed me as an excellent vessel to keep your youth. You didn't want an heir, you wanted a new body. You're an old-timer who didn't want to let go of power and wouldn't let the young take the reins of the future. You're pathetic. More pathetic than some 1,000-year-old sorcerers I've met." "TSK," said Afo, frustrated. "Besides, you're quite ugly, Tomura-chan. Probably couldn't stand seeing your horrendous face in a mirror," Toga mocked her former leader. "Finally, the other world made me see the nightmare of being tied to controlling strings. I experienced the exact same thing with you, and I refuse to repeat it. I'm a monster, and I'll pave my own path as such," Tomura said passionately as he touched his chest with determination. "Nonsense. You're just spouting nonsense. I'm free from you. I'll make my life here without you. This is the last time you'll see me, I bid farewell." "Shut up!" Afo exclaimed furiously, accumulating a large amount of electricity in his hand. "I don't know who influenced you with this nonsense. But as I said, I won't forgive any betrayal. You will die." Suddenly, a powerful bolt of electricity was shot from his hand towards both of them. The attack seemed potent and destructive, creating cracks and chaos in its short path toward its target. Surprisingly, Toga, the blood assassin, only yawned at her ex-leader's attack. "You're even more boring than I remembered. Takainori Oji-chan is going to be upset," the girl said disdainfully. Without warning, a low-level protective spell projected through a magic circle that the girl activated by placing her left hand forward in the direction of the villain's lightning. The spell was effective, and the formidable lightning was absorbed rapidly. "Impossible!" the villains exclaimed in shock, unable to believe that their former lieutenant could perform such a feat. What followed was even more unheard of. Toga unexpectedly said, reciting a spell in an unknown language. Without warning, the same magic circle appeared behind her, directing the lightning toward Afo and Kurogiri, who barely managed to avoid it, causing great damage to the base courtyard and further deteriorating the corpses. "TSK, damn it!" Kurogiri exclaimed, witnessing the enormous power she possessed. How is this possible? Afo said in shock at what he had just witnessed. Believe me, old friend, my grandchildren have been trained well, said a charismatic voice, quite familiar. Surprises kept coming within the main base of the League of Villains. All Might, in all his glory and rejuvenated youth, returned with new abilities like flight. Damn. You're supposed to be retired, old bastard. You offend me, I may be old, but I have vast experience behind me, All Might said, mocking with a big smile. You shouldn't be like new, you should be a decrepit old man. Afo said, reaching maximum levels of frustration. All Might didn't take long to touch the ground with an epic entrance where the ground shook slightly, and some rocks flew upward, all while striking the famous pose, fist on the ground, seen in famous comics. Toga was the only one who applauded, a bit excited by All Might's spectacle. That's an epic entrance, Oji-chan. Tomura couldn't help but get excited either. Finish off the old man. As he quickly stood up, he decided to keep talking while slowly approaching the said villain. Every step he took, the crunch of his footsteps on the ground and the creaking of the imposing armor he wore could be heard. You know? I've always wanted to make an epic entrance when facing you, one of the many things on my to-do list. Like humiliating and defeating someone who has been a thorn in my ass for a large part of my life and also in the lives of the previous holders. A part of me wants you to give a good fight to make it worth my time. Afo replied somewhat confidently. You've become very arrogant, All Might. Where did humility go in your words when we faced each other in the past? I'll tell you what a wise man once told me, show your humility to those beneath you and to your close ones. Display your warrior pride in battle, for the enemy will show its strength. Advice that has stuck with me in life, and I intend to follow it until the end, All Might said, drawing his enormous sword, showcasing an admirable fencing stance. His shining sword continued to dazzle the desolate place filled with the death of those villains who chose the wrong place to be. This will be your end, All Might. Then I'll deal with those traitors and extract answers about their unexpected power, Afo said, internally preparing every extremely strong quirk for his battle. A strange ending with that armor of yours, cursed madman. Jiru, where do you think they are? Uraka asked, panting from exhaustion after traversing a large part of the school in search of them. I don't know. Just keep running. Kyoka replied, equally tired. During the journey, Uraka learned from her friend that when she passed out, the two guys quickly came to her aid. The others, who were also present, got concerned about her and wanted to help. At the same time, the missing members of the group had also arrived at the classroom. Things initially calmed down as their vital signs were fine. But when Ida tried to use some strange kind of magic on her, the others stopped him. For some strange reason, they refused assistance, claiming it was probably a minor issue. Shortly after, they left the room for pending matters regarding their missing members, wishing her a quick recovery. Obviously, they couldn't help but follow them out of curiosity, leaving only her friend to assist her in case she woke up. She didn't judge their action at first, just sensing they thought it was excessive for a simple fainting. However, there was an uncomfortable feeling about her classmates' behavior, which she would need to reflect on later. For now, the priority was to be with Izuku and the other classmates to get answers about what happened to them. After a while, they encountered some of their classmates walking down the hallway that led back to their assigned classroom. At first glance, they were in a discussion, displaying expressions of confusion and annoyance on their faces, resulting from their first contact with their changed classmates. As expected, it didn't take them long to realize that they were approaching. Oh, Chaco-san, I see you're okay. You scared us all, Sato said, watching Uraka approach them. Like him, most were relieved that nothing bad had happened to her due to her fainting. It's good that you're okay, Karo Asui said in a friendly manner. Kyoka, upon joining the others, quickly engaged in another conversation with her eccentric partner Hanta, the tape guy, asking how it went following their changed classmates. Guys, have you seen our classmates who were summoned to another world? Uraka asked, her exhaustion evident. Why do you want to talk to them? Tokoyami Fumikage asked curiously. Just for answers, nothing more than that, Uraka said seriously. Then, Momo Yaoyorozu spoke up to explain to her friend what had happened. The principal told them there would be a meeting with their families, and we couldn't hear the other details. For now, they're gathering their scattered members from all over the city. Ashido-san told us they would be very busy today, so she promised to catch up with us at another time. Until this point, the brunette felt relieved to know that she was up to date with recent events, at least from what her classmates managed to find out. However, for some strange reason, just knowing that was not enough to settle for a single answer. She needed to know more, even if the circumstances were not the most suitable. President, do you know where they went? Or at least, can you tell me where the place was where they were last seen? Uraka said determinedly. We saw them heading to the outskirts of the academy, but, Ochako-san, I don't think it's. Thanks. Then, she turned to her friend Kyoka. I'll go on my own. Thanks, Jiru-san, take a break for a moment. Uraka said, ending with a respectful bow. Wait, Ochako-san. Asui said, trying to calm her. I'm sorry, guys. We'll talk later, said the brunette without listening to anyone's reasons. The others couldn't stop her decision, and as expected, she moved forward, heading towards the academy's exit, without heeding their recommendations or constant pleas. By the time she was out of sight of her frustrated classmates, the argument began. TSK! Exclaimed Katsuki Bakugo in annoyance, why can't that stubborn girl quickly understand that they're not our classmates? Then, Toru Hagakure added to Katsuki. Doesn't she understand that we tried to stop her for her own good? Don't you think her fainting and murmuring in a strange language happened just when they showed up? Something must have happened due to their strange abilities. Our real classmates would never do this to a friend. Toru's frustration was reflected in visible exhales from her breath. It's too much of a coincidence. They still have the audacity to try to help her with that strange magic. Ida went too far with his assistance, as did Izuku. I just hope they don't do something to her if she meets them, commented Ojiro, who agreed with Katsuki. I can't believe there are more classmates who have been to another world, commented Yuga Aoyama freely, who was excited. A part of Class B also experienced it. Incredible. You still believe that story, Aoyama? Reproached Katsuki to his classmate. It's the truth, my dear Grump, said Yuga with conviction. Besides, it's more interesting to know the relationships that formed in that place. For example, I never thought I'd see Mina-san loving Izuku-kun and even kissing him. Yuga-san, Momo said, interrupting her classmate. This isn't the important topic here. We need to think about what we should do. If Midoriya-san is hanging out with Ashido-san, that's not important for now, those are the classmates we know. Plus, we need to consider the fact that something happened to Ochako-san, probably because of those strange powers. Even teacher Toshinori-san has changed. Guys, Kyoka said, taking over the conversation. We need to think things through. We shouldn't jump to conclusions. From what Hanta told me, Izuku and our classmates are not the only ones. I wonder if love blossomed and spread to more summoned members of our group. Jiru-san, as you say, there might be more couples that we haven't known about, Yuga said. Shut up, Aoyama. Just shut up. Suddenly, Injiro Kirishima reflected what he had been feeling since he learned the news and everything else. His expression could only be seen as pain and distress. After this, no one said anything about the topic. Even Katsuki knew it was better to forget about it for a moment. Uraka quickened her pace again to head towards the exit. Fortunately for her tired self, the journey turned out to be shorter than expected, giving her hope of catching up with them. It can't be, she exclaimed, surprised. When she reached the main gate of the school, the one that led directly to the street, she witnessed the resurgence of All Might's glory. The hero, from the asphalt of the street, unexpectedly shot up from the ground to float at a considerable height. Then, as if it were a jet from the JSDF, Japan Self-Defense Forces, he broke the sound barrier to propel himself from the sky to an unknown location. All Might is back, thought Uraka, surprised, although she couldn't control her body to celebrate this event, despite completely ignoring how he returned to his former self. She couldn't help but remember the old times when she watched his heroic acts on television. Her parents were her biggest friends when it came to talking about heroes and how much they earned annually. Seeing that glory revived again was a breath of fresh air in the midst of so much uncertainty in her life. After that, it took only a few steps to finally find what she was looking for. Here they are, Uraka said happily, seeing that they were still nearby. Right below where the hero was floating, the group of summoned individuals was gathered, apparently discussing a serious matter on the sidewalk before leaving the academy for good. Wait for the signal from Onkoku-san. Izuku ordered visibly, doing this is the last thing we need to complete as a group. This has to go well. Everything will be fine, boss. Toshinori Oji-chan is already doing his part of the operation. Koga-chan has given notice, said Denki Kaminari with a relaxed attitude. Relax, sweetheart. Mina said beside Izuku, we just have to wait, we've been in worse circumstances. Let's just hope our classmates leave enough important prisoners alive to hand them over to the commission. Ida said seriously, his eyes focused on the current mission. You already know them. They still love the battle, Setsuna said, just as carefree as Denki. I wouldn't be surprised if they killed that old man before the grandpa captured him. Were we really so afraid of him? That fear was justified before, Yui said seriously, levitating her magic staff to avoid carrying it all the time. We didn't have the power to face him before. Yui-san is right. I wonder if he could withstand one of my mana cannons. It would be a good test object, Mei said, analyzing the possibility while stroking her chin thoughtfully. Sorry. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by Uraka. She had approached close enough for them to hear, but her voice still sounded timid. Uraka-san. Ida, the former class representative, exclaimed happily. It's good to know you're okay. Izuku-kun told us you fainted. Are you okay? Mei said, happy to see the only girl who tolerated her before being summoned. Even though she had mixed feelings about the inventor being married to the guy she loved, she was genuinely happy that she was okay, as were the others. I'm fine, Hatsune-san. Maybe I fainted because my glucose was low. It's nothing. Sorry for not waking you up earlier, Izuku said, approaching the girl. But our classmates insisted I didn't use a runic spell to wake you up. They said it wasn't necessary. I'm aware. No problem, she said, remembering what Kyoka had told her. She still felt that uncomfortable sensation when recalling it, but she decided to ignore it for now. Hey, Ochako-san. How about we go shopping at the mall for clothes? We need more suitable attire, Itsuka said, somewhat excited. Obviously, after taking care of an urgent mission. Doesn't sound like a bad idea, Yui commented with a slight smile. I miss my cringe dinosaur clothes, Setsuna said nostalgically, remembering her teenage years when she liked to dress that way. Let's see if there's anything in my size, Mina said, looking at her battle outfit. I don't need a change of clothes, Mei said, refusing with crossed arms, even though she knew her clothes were somewhat stained and worn. You know you need it, Mina said with judgmental eyes. You technomages don't shine for your appearance. Their outings to buy clothes were one of the things the girls of the generation missed the most. The only thing they could do without remembering their class rivalry. Although Itsuka's addiction to buying BL manga was also among their hidden plans. Won't Ochako-san have classes? Ibara commented, a little worried about affecting her academically. I still remember we were in the middle of the semester. The shorty is going to keep Aizawa-san busy for a while. Monoma broke his silence, leaning casually against the wall. You guys are only here as emergency elements if everything goes wrong. Even the boss told us that the participation of all clan members wasn't necessary. That's why Mineta-san went to find his wives in the company of that otaku. I'd say it's not bad to celebrate at a mall, right? Wait. Is he married? Uraka exclaimed, frozen by surprise. Believe me, even we found it hard to believe at first, Kaminari said, laughing a bit. But he's not the same as before. I'd say he loves seeing more precious metals than harassing girls. From that moment, she committed to sharing her father's love for the Lord of the Rings, as it would probably be an excellent way to understand some things about her peers. So, Ida also smiled slightly. Sometimes, he liked to be a little lenient and see his comrades happy. As Monoma had said, not everyone's participation is necessary here. I guess with just Denki, me, Monoma, and the boss, we're enough to do what we need to do. They won't be too many to control. What do you think, Izuku-sama? The final word rested with none other than the boss, who with a wide grin confirmed what his right-hand man had just said. Girls, we'll be watching for Onkoku's signal. The others assigned will do their part at the LV base. We won't be long before facing the commission, and it'll be quick to hand over that old man. After finishing, we'll take advantage of the time before being summoned by Nezu. You certainly deserve more time to enjoy. After all, Uraka-san has classes tomorrow, and we'll all be busy too. What do you say? As expected, all the girls celebrated with a resounding yes. Except Uraka, who had one last doubt to express to the leader. One that had been drilling into her head in these last few seconds. Mei was the only undecided one. I couldn't help but hear about a matter, a mission. What is it about? Where did All Might Sensei go? She asked with curiosity. Oh. Get rid of the League of Villains forever. Also, assassinate several collaborators, allies, important members, except some we're going to hand over to the Commission, including that villain who faced All Might in the past. He's going to help us capture him. You know, the villain who kidnapped Kachan Izuku said, with the same tone a teenager would use when planning a weekend trip. Only Uraka could respond with a resounding yes, while she had goosebumps. Yes. I hope it goes well for you. She said in a tone that showed her nervousness. This is pathetic, commented Toga with a slight yawn. I can feel his frustration, said Tomura with an evil smile. Such an unbearable feeling that for him, it would be like drinking acid. Shortly before the battle began, Toshinori ordered the two of them to take the live prisoners out of the place since there was a possibility of shaking the place too much and causing it to collapse. So Tomura quickly, using dark arts, teleported everyone alive to a nearby area. Then, they were piled up in an insanely uncomfortable way. Fortunately, the place they were in was an excellent spot to observe the battle at the base. Damn it. Die. Kill Oppenheimer. A foe exclaimed desperately as he unleashed another attack from his long list of quirks. Not even an explosive attack that left several craters in the base and scattered pieces of the dead even worse than they were, managed to hit the hero. You rely too much on the strength of your attacks and don't calculate their accuracy well. It's a mistake any warrior should correct. All Might scolded his enemy with a smile on his face. Shut up. You shouldn't be lecturing me. Suddenly, his telekinetic powers came into play, and various debris made of metal flew pointedly toward the hero. All Might's only reaction was to sheath his sword and disappear at the last moment before the debris went straight at him. What? Suddenly, the hero was transported right next to him, and the villain received a blow that he could momentarily block with his deformed arm. This attack made him step back half a meter from his opponent. Good try. His satisfaction didn't last long, as without warning, he felt that all the air in his lungs had vanished in an instant. It left him in a weakened position, and he couldn't help but fall to his knees. What's happening? Did you find a gold coin? All Might said with an arrogant tone. The villain could only feel helplessness. Humiliation like he had never felt before. Finally, the most feared villain in Japan and the rest of the world was on his knees. To Kurogiri's misfortune, he could only watch and hide among the debris of the already destroyed base. Kurogiri hasn't been around since the early days of his boss's criminal career, All for One, but he knows the story well. All for One is a bad guy who grew up in the shadows of the underworld, scaring everyone in Japan, criminals, heroes, and regular people. His power and influence are famous, surviving through different times and hero threats. That's why he's seen as the biggest threat to society's peace. With a well-run organization, loyal and powerful members, and connections everywhere, it was thought he could finally win the eternal war against the forces of good. Unfortunately, fate took an unexpected turn for his boss. His greatest rival reappeared out of nowhere with even more power. Plus, he faced betrayal from elite members of his own organization, including someone he considered his son for a while. The elite members of the organization caused their own downfall. They killed countless members who used to respect them and even dared to murder other leaders they once called friends. You didn't need to be there to know what the traitors did. The villain only had to witness the horrifying scene at the base. They went so far as to dehumanize their victims, and to their misfortune, they became a blood feast for a girl addicted to it. Her addiction made her lose control, staining the walls as she craved more. Seeing the blood of Lieutenant Spinner on the lips of former Lieutenant Toga gave the impression that she genuinely enjoyed consuming it. The traitor Tomura Shigaraki also had a terrifying power. He left his victims as lifeless, mummified corpses by absorbing a kind of life energy that kept them alive. A power even his boss hadn't acquired. They were terrifying monsters who managed to earn the affection of the greatest rival to their former master, even calling him Oji-chan, uncle. This can't be real, Kurogiri exclaimed in horror as he saw his boss kneeling before All Might. The situation wasn't in their favor, and victory seemed to be in the enemy's hands. The living members were teleported to an unknown place, along with the traitors, leaving the League without a functional army at that moment. Setting aside the traitors, only he, his boss, and him, said the villain, excited. Right. He's the one who ensured our victory last time against the heroes, that bastard Gigantomachia. Gigantomachia is one of All for One's loyal servants and his former bodyguard, cultivated to be useful for the League of Villains if something happened. Currently, He has pledged allegiance to the traitor and joined the Paranormal Liberation Front when the League of Villains and the Liberation Army of Superpowers joined forces. If he knew that Tomura Shigaraki had betrayed the League, he would react with devastating fury. You could describe the giant as a walking disaster, living and dying for the well-being of his master. Once awakened and commanded, he will go through and destroy everything in his path, caring only about his sole goal. So, they finally had a viable option for the League of Villains to prevail. "This is our last chance," exclaimed Kurogiri. He knew the giant wouldn't withstand their power, but if it attacked a nearby city again, the distraction would be significant, providing an escape window. Fortunately, the giant had a radio tied to its neck to activate if needed to leave its cave deep in the mountains. So, the shadow villain disappeared into the darkness to fulfill his purpose in a desperate attempt to save his boss from a humiliating defeat. "I'm so upset. I expected more from you, old enemy," exclaimed the former symbol of peace with frustration. Meanwhile, the villain could barely get up due to the blow he had received, unable to mitigate its effects. "Cursed. I can't move," said the villain in a desperate attempt to move. For the first time in his life, he was on his knees in front of his brother's successor, a form of humiliation he never thought he'd experience. "Surprised?" said All Might with an arrogant voice. "The blow I gave you is a technique I developed myself, allowing me to weaken your mana supply in the body. That means any quirk you want to access for a certain moment will be useless for a limited time. Although I'm surprised that it weakened you to the point of not being able to move. I guess your body was so weakened that you couldn't withstand my technique and couldn't function without a quirk." "Shut up. You're just talking fantasy," said the villain with a strained voice. "You probably implanted those ideas about my pupil. You only have one quirk I couldn't steal. I wouldn't call him a pupil, more like a puppet. One you wanted to use to stay young because you're old and finished. It's pathetic, considering you're the villain who managed to ruin the lives of my predecessors and also that of my successor at some point. How is this possible?" exclaimed the villain on the ground with a lot of desperation. "You should be finished." Suddenly, the hero rested his sword, burying it in the ground, then took his chin with his fingers, contemplating what to do next. Seeing him like that only caused the villain endless despair. It didn't take long for him to decide. "Ready. I've decided what to do." "What?" Without warning, the hero pulled a white napkin from his left pocket. Then, using his left ring finger, the tip of which glowed intensely, he drew a kind of rune of unknown origin. "It won't hurt. I learned this trick from a sexy demon queen. You'll even feel better," said All Might with an evil smile. For the first time, a foe was afraid. "What are you going to do?" "What you wanted from Tomura-chan." "What?" Suddenly, the hero brutally slapped the villain's face with a cloth. This caused a foe to be pushed directly to the base floor, letting small debris fly around. The hero firmly held the cloth to the villain's face as he resisted in vain. It didn't take long to see the effect, leaving a brighter light visible under the cloth. Fortunately, a foe wasn't wearing his helmet at that moment, as it had been destroyed at some point in the battle. "I think you're ready." Then, after finishing his work, All Might stood up and moved away from the villain to contemplate what he had done, grabbing his sword buried in the process. A foe, on the other hand, didn't take long to stand up again and start touching his face. Slowly, feeling the results, his ear-to-ear smile appeared towards the hero. Any malformation had disappeared. Even his arm had returned to its normal form. "Son of a bitch. You did it." After a foe's words, All Might smiled enthusiastically. Gradually, his fighting spirit had resumed. "What do you say? Are you finally going to prove why you were the most feared villain?" he said with great spirit. "I'll show you more than that. I'm at 100%, even more than when I was young." Suddenly, in his right arm, purple lightning flashed, gathering a great deal of strength. "I'll prove to you that you'll regret facing me at my best." "Show it. Give me a fun time," said All Might, pointing to the villain, while his cape fluttered in the wind. Without waiting for the moment to attack, a foe quickly, with a speed that could rival the American hero Flash, went straight towards the hero. 1,000,000 forces in my hand," shouted the villain, mentioning his most atrocious attack. An attack that consisted of a punch increased due to the force of molecular acceleration, meaning that at high speed, he accumulated a great force that he could use against an enemy, as if a car were speeding towards a pedestrian. What baffled the villain is that the hero didn't budge an inch and didn't show any signs of being under attack. Although this mattered little to him as he had decided to attack. Die. His attack had once again shaken the base structure, causing a slight earthquake and the scattering of debris all around. The celebration of a foe's resurgence had come to an abrupt halt. His fist hadn't advanced an inch, and neither had his body. Gradually, the smoke from the debris had cleared, revealing a rather calm hero. "Ha! Is that all you've got?" said All Might with charisma. Unfortunately, the hero remained unmoved. His fist had collided with the enemy's abdomen, leaving an impression of hitting concrete. "No," he exclaimed with frustration eating at him. "Why won't you die? Magicula's, son." Without wasting time, a foe began to repeatedly strike All Might's abdomen. Despite his quirks allowing him to have higher physical energy than usual, the effects were diminishing. Any impact he wanted to deliver with his blows was futile. Despite changing his quirks, the result would be the same. Not even the one that gave him strength similar to that of 1,000 men. "Die, die, 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 you piece of shit." Gradually, his hands were wearing out despite the regeneration quirks. The effects were the same for them if exposed to repetitive blows on hard metal. "Are you done?" "No," said the villain in response to All Might. His willpower was slowly breaking. "I am, as I don't have all day to play with you, even though I'd like to. Boss's orders." "What?" said a foe, stopping his futile attack and taking a few steps back from the hero. Shock and fear of being defeated were preventing him from thinking clearly. He almost wished to cowardly escape to safeguard his life. His heart was pounding a mile a minute, anxiety dominating his body and mind. "For now, I'll use my hands, otherwise, you'll die by my weapon. Be thankful that my grandson/boss has taught me other forms of attack." The only thing left to do was, "Please. Mercy. If I were the previous All Might, I would have shown mercy. But the one you see in front of you would have killed you on a whim. Keep that in mind during your long stay in Tartarus, in case you try to rise against peace again." His aura of death surrounded him, terrifying the villain. "No. Please. Mercy." Suddenly, the hero gripped one of his fingers with his thumb, creating significant tension, and then uttered his next attack. "Return the favor to my enemy." Full counter. Without warning, a burst of whitish energy was expelled towards the villain. The last thing he saw before being defeated was a blinding light. Immediately after, another explosion shook the already crumbling League base building. Shortly afterward, the smoke cleared again, revealing a foe unconscious in a crater. His clothes were torn, the corners of his lips bleeding, and he had several bruises on his body. "I guess my part here is over," said the hero in a relaxed attitude. Without warning, a force of nature was heading towards the location. Completely enraged by the sudden news she had received, she was eager for revenge. It was Gigantomachia, who made a dramatic entrance, destroying any nearby trees to reach the base. "I'll avenge him, boss. I swear. I'll kill the traitors and kill All Might myself," thought the giant angrily. A few seconds later, he was at the building's perimeter, calmly observing All Might and his boss lying motionless in a small crater. "Boss. I'll avenge him," exclaimed the enraged giant. All Might had clearly seen the giant's presence but remained unfazed, just smiling nonchalantly. "Your turn, Miss Takeyama-san." Suddenly, the giant's path toward the hero was interrupted by a figure speeding towards him. As if the attacker had been flying previously, she delivered a fierce kick to his abdomen, sending him half a kilometer away. When he recovered, clearing the trees that covered him, he could see the culprit who prevented him from avenging his boss, none other than the giant woman who had challenged him before. "Nice to see you again, Mount Lady," she exclaimed with an evil expression. "Hello, Gigantomachia. Long time no see, you miserable bastard," she said charismatically. Her giant heroine form did not disappoint. This time, she looked different, as her attire resembled that of a Viking woman, with braids adorning a part of her long hair. She now wore brown and black war armor covering her entire body, with an unfamiliar axe at her waist. "You look different, woman. I don't see the same fox who sells herself on television. Now I see a different version of you, something distinct," the giant said, rising slowly. Harsh words coming from a giant who lives in a lonely cave, licking the feet of a villain so weak he fell at the hands of my father-in-law, she said seriously. As expected, the villain was offended. "I serve my lord with honor," declared the giant with conviction. Hearing that, she just laughed lightly. "You know," Mount Lady said, unsheathing her giant axe skillfully, "a true giant lives freely. They live through their convictions and ideals. They live to die in battle to defend their beliefs to the death, just like their loved ones. You are not a true giant. You are a disgrace, she said, pointing her axe at the villain. You're getting in my way, cheap cosplay bitch. I need to avenge my boss. I'm afraid you won't even get to see him. You and he will have the same fate, I assure you. For now, I can show you what it means to be a real giant. You'll regret this, bitch, said the angry giant. We'll see about that. She replied in a fighting pose. In the middle of a giant battle, two young former villains were watching nearby, having a conversation to pass the time. Toga-chan, can I ask you something? Toga inquired curiously. What do you want to know? Did it bother you to kill our old comrades? Toga asked, curious. Why do you ask? They were our comrades, we spent time with them. For instance, I used to care a lot about Twice-san as a friend. I would have given my life for him, but now I've killed him without much hesitation. Also, I didn't care at all about leaving the majority without mana for reincarnation or without blood to keep living. The question is, how do we get to a point where we don't care about anything anymore? Listening to this, Tomura pondered for a moment. Let me tell you a story, Toga. Before I met all of you, I spent a significant part of my life with my father and his criminal activities. When I was still a child, I met a hitman, whose name I don't remember, but he was probably our age before we went to Terheim. My father hired him to eliminate people who were inconvenient for him. So, it was common for the guy to visit us at the bar often. Most of the time, they made him wait, and he ended up talking to me. Over time, I came to consider him as an older brother, the typical cool brother who brings you sweets or plays with you. I didn't have siblings, but I know what you mean. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble slightly, but they didn't pay attention. Anyway, I spent 2 years with that routine, with him visiting often and playing with him whenever possible. But there came a time when my father no longer needed his services, and the visits ended. He left without saying goodbye, without warning that he wouldn't come back, and he didn't want to contact me again. Did that affect you a lot? Toga asked, a little concerned if it had affected him in any way. Unexpectedly for the blonde, he didn't get sentimental. I was a child, I guess we cling to the first authority that gives us comfort and affection. But as you grow up, you realize that it's not easy to come by. I know, Toga said with a small lump in her throat, recalling bitter recent memories. Immediately after, she calmed down a bit and regained composure. She didn't want to remember things again, especially on such an important occasion. Anyway, time passed, and I turned 12 back then. Around that time, I started carrying out the missions my father assigned to me and improving my training with my quirk. In one of those missions, some thugs who acted as bodyguards for me and I went to collect a favor my father had done for a local politician in eastern Japan. Initially, the guy refused to pay my father, so we were sent to force him to settle his debt. When we reached his residence, we were ambushed, and those protecting me were burned to ashes. I spent the next 10 minutes avoiding their attacks, but I couldn't touch him to disintegrate him. There came a moment when I managed to take off his mask and saw his face. It was him, and obviously, like a naive child, I asked why he had attacked us. I knew it was me, but I couldn't understand why he wanted to kill me. He simply laughed and looked at me with disdain. He spoke to me very condescendingly now that I remember. Then he said, "Things change, kid. This chubby politician hired me to kill the old man's thugs, and that's what I'm going to do. It's a shame, kid. I liked you." After that, my disillusionment was so great that, like an enraged child, I killed him without hesitation. "I would have killed him just like you did," Toga said seriously. "The thing is, I learned that day that in this world, you can't trust friends you meet along the way or people you grow fond of 100%, because they won't necessarily be close to you forever." As he told me that day, things change. He stopped working for my father and had other employers. By fate, there came a point where I became a target of his work. Doesn't it sound familiar? Tomura said, looking at Toga. After the question, Toga could barely emit a sigh of frustration. "You're right. Now we're members of the Wolf Clan. We left the League years ago, and as you say, our old comrades became our targets. Life is strange, isn't it?" "Yes, life is very weird, and you never know where it might lead you," Tomura said, smiling a bit. Meanwhile, the groans of Dabi behind them started to be heard, who was frozen along with the other survivors. Obviously, they noticed that and turned their gaze to Dabi's panicked expression, as well as his intentions to escape at all costs. "It seems Fujimi-san's brother is complaining. He might have seen how the battle with Yu-chan is going," Toga said, looking at Dabi. Without warning, a tree flew very close to them and collided with a nearby stone wall. At the same time, fierce roars from the giant were heard. It seems he has lost hope. I'm sorry, old friend, but you have to wait for your sister again, Tomura said, showing his sadistic expression again. Meanwhile, Dabi fought fiercely to break free from the freezing that Tomura had imposed on him. His panic consumed him as he saw that Gigantomachia was losing the battle. It was the last straw. Damn bitch! Roared the giant with intense fury. Gigantomachia possesses incredible strength, which allowed him to serve for years as the personal bodyguard of All for One. He also has experience in battling giants with similar strength and outstanding abilities, such as speed and durability. His ability to increase his size in combat and his undefeated record further set him apart. Now, it seems that none of that is enough. Despite his ability allowing him to surpass the woman in size, he couldn't defeat her in battle. I must say you have excellent strength for a giant child. A lot of brute force and little precision. You relied on your fists to harm me without considering my agility and rushed towards me, giving me numerous opportunities to make you fall. I'll tell you something, the worst weakness of a warrior and a giant is unrefined brute strength, Mount Lady commented calmly. I'm faster than you, woman. I'll prove it to you. Suddenly, Gigantomachia grabbed huge solid chunks of earth from the forest floor and forcefully crushed them to create sharp masses. Then, with inhuman speed, he threw them at the heroine as if they were giant projectiles. This technique allowed him to defeat foreign giants in the past who didn't have enough speed to avoid them, resulting in multiple holes. His incredible strength and speed allowed him to perform such feats. What the hell? Exclaimed the giant in surprise. Mount Lady cut through the projectiles with only her reliable axe, generating a small storm of fine sand behind her. Oh, I know this game. You're an excellent player, you could beat my former teacher. Although it's very popular among elderly giants, it's quite outdated, don't you think? Mount Lady said. How is this possible? Exclaimed the increasingly tired giant as the nearby earth ran out. Finally, the giant stopped throwing pieces of earth at her due to the fatigue his body began to feel. Is that all? Don't you want to play anymore? Since I left the giant race, no one wants to play with me. Not even my husband, Iri-chan, Denki-san, and the others want to play with me. Everyone told me I play too rough with the projectiles, the woman said, feigning a pout due to disappointment. Suddenly, she began to smile arrogantly at her opponent, making the giant feel unworthy to be in battle with her and hurting his pride in the process. Shut up, just shut up. Stop smiling, exclaimed the frustrated giant. If that's all, I suppose the games are over, said the giant suddenly, sheathing her axe at her waist. Oh well, it's time I show you the true power of a giant. Be thankful I'm not using the axe, or else you'd be dead. Gigantomachia was evidently offended by her comment. Are you underestimating me? He gathered courage and fury. I'll kill you. As expected, the giant lunged towards her with his usual brute force. Without warning, Mount Lady made only a slight movement with her feet, causing the giant to feel the ground moving beneath him, and he suddenly lost balance. His fall caused a slight tremor in the earth. What? Exclaimed the surprised giant. You'll do well to watch the birds, she suddenly said. Unexpectedly, she stomped forcefully on the ground on the opposite side. As a result, a large pillar of earth emerged, hitting the giant and sending him flying 200 meters into the air, then crashing into a nearby place. Suddenly, nostalgia invaded the woman. This reminds me of everything I had to endure with my teacher, Mount Lady said, recalling with some fondness the constant beatings and humiliations she endured while learning the martial arts of giants, as well as their greatest power, earth control. What the just incorporated giant didn't expect was for the giantess to make more movements with her feet and arms, causing a platform of earth to rise beneath her feet. The fact that she could withstand his immense weight left him perplexed. Then, two enormous fists of earth appeared on the sides of the floating platform and, before the giant could react, collided with him. The impact caused a slight shockwave that spread through the forest, shaking the nearby trees. Finally, Gigantomachia fell to the ground again. After a few minutes, he regained consciousness quickly and couldn't help but be in shock. Is this a Nickelodeon prank? I thought this only happened in children's shows. Thought the surprised giant. He knew that having this power was being on a completely new level of abilities. No one with quirks manipulating the earth could have done what she did, especially because she had to surpass the physical limits her human body allowed. It was something he simply couldn't believe, but now he witnessed that it was real, and she had it. That power was terrifying, clearly beyond anything he had seen in his entire life. As expected, The giantess approached him with a very intimidating aura. You don't know how much I've been waiting for this, Gigantomachia. Since our last battle, I've only felt sadness and suffering from my defeat. Not just me, but also the families of the heroes and my friends who gave their lives to stop you. But we both know it was useless. My best friend, Nemuri Kayama, was in a coma for several months, and because of that, her life worsened. Like everyone I know, to be honest. Suddenly, Gigantomachia had a panic attack. It was something he had never experienced before. His giant heart was beating 1,000 times per hour. I spent years hating everything about you, you know? You took away my pride, my fiancé left me because he couldn't handle my trauma, you stole my sleep with nightmares caused by the fear I had of you. Thanks to you, I have this horrendous scar on my eyebrow, she said with a growing fury. What do you want from me? Asked Gigantomachia with a shaky voice. She was getting close to him. If it were up to me, I'd kill you. But my husband's orders are to take you alive to the commission. So, for now, I just want you to surrender because my patience is hanging by a very thin thread, said the giant with a very intimidating voice. For the first time in his life, he saw an opponent so giant and intimidating that they could reach the skies. For the first time, he felt like a mere small-sized mortal in comparison. He had grossly underestimated this woman, and now he was paying the consequences. Sorry, boss. You'll have to handle it on your own now, he thought to himself. The loyalty he once had to his boss vanished with the wind. Obviously, his only option was to run as far away as possible. So, he tried to run with all his might. Who the hell are you? He exclaimed before fleeing. I am your end, she said, making a strange move with her feet and hands. Without warning, the ground beneath the giant sank, and consequently, he ended up with his feet buried under it. Then, a prison of earth formed around the other half of his body. A prison that could easily be mistaken for a newly formed hill. The giant could only curse. Damn it. Be a good boy, she said with a sadistic smile. Then, with a simple gesture, earth spikes formed around the giant's neck. All the other spikes in your earth prison are ready to pierce you if you make a slight move to free yourself. Understood? At this moment, defeat was inevitable. Yes, said the resigned giant. Good boy, she said, patting the head of her prey as if scolding a freshly scolded puppy. Suddenly, a slight feeling of being observed reached her mind. She just had to turn to the other side, and she saw who was watching her. I suspected it. Civilian paparazzi didn't waste any time. I guess I attracted too much attention, she said with frustration. Unexpectedly, a few kilometers away, campers began recording in amazement with their phones what had just happened. Inevitably, this would go viral in a matter of minutes. And the gossipmongers were not missing. Oh well, I went viral, she said, downplaying the matter with shrugged shoulders. For now, the clan had captured one of its most significant prisoners in addition to a foe. To Kurogiri's misfortune, his fear of having missed his chance to win made him visible to another member of the wolf clan, who simply surprised him from behind, absorbing his darkness and sealing it in a small jar. Without warning, a portal opened near the two former villains, revealing a girl known for her portals. Ankoku-san, it's good that you're here. Who did you bring? Exclaimed Toga excitedly upon seeing another one of her friends. I came to celebrate a family meeting with my little brother, she said seriously and somewhat excited to see what would happen next. Suddenly, Fujimi Todoroki and her clearly shocked brother, Shoto Todoroki, had crossed the portal behind Ankoku. The atmosphere was extremely strange for the younger brother. Everything seemed unreal to him, as if it were a dream he wished wasn't real. Meanwhile, Fujimi had entered a rather unusual and dangerous phase. Suddenly, her eyes burned with excitement for what she planned to do. Toga-chan. Where is my brother? I need to have a family talk, brother to brother. The Todoroki family reunion had begun.